I'm super excited because in this episode, you'll get to listen in and find out some real life strategies from some of the best telehealth therapists that I know. My name is Jessica McMurdie from playitforwardtherapy.net, and my other role is clinical director and owner at Stepping Stones Therapy Network Pediatric Outpatient Clinic. So it's been over a year, and we've had to convert our in person sessions to online sessions since the pandemic. And joining me today for our roundtable discussion are Jennifer, Shannon, Sarah, Jessica, and Julia. Now, all of us have been trained with the T School program, which is telehealth training for therapists, and it's really given us a solid foundation for setting up our sessions for success. We've learned the tools and techniques to manage telehealth sessions no matter what happens on our side of the screen or the other side of the screen. As a team, we've had some time to reflect upon the benefits of telehealth for our clients, parents, and also for ourselves as providers. And now we'd like to share some tips and insights that we've learned. So we'll make sure you stay to the end to hear some of the best techniques to add to your telehealth toolbox from this talented team of occupational therapists.
So the things I like about doing telehealth is just the flexibility it provides. It's a lot easier for families to schedule or reschedule if they know that they don't have to make the trek out to the clinic. If they only have 10 minutes to get ready, it doesn't matter if their kids are getting OT in their pajamas or if somebody else is visiting or the car doesn't start. They can still do OT as long as as long as they're able to help out a bit. In the case of younger kids, sometimes they just need to get them set up for older kids. In fact, I love telehealth for older kids for the most part because it helps them be more independent in their home because they know what they have. They know what they can do.
Right.
The other really nice thing is I feel like parents are a lot more willing to communicate with me what issues the child is having at home or what games they're making at home. I have several parents who we start off the session just by talking for 5 minutes about the gains that the child has made, positive things that have happened, or some of the challenges that the child has had in the last week. And that really gives me a great sense of how the kids and their parents are communicating. And like when they're in their own homes, they're more likely to remember, oh yeah, so last Wednesday, Mark was having this issue and he remembered to use this tool, or he was able to tell me how he was feeling, which is such a big deal.
So being able to generalize skills.
Yeah. And then it can also be fun because siblings will participate. And so we'll have some group silliness or, just being able to spend time with their parents and really seeing what OT is like. And it really helps with flexibility. What I was worried about first was being able to direct the kids in the activities, how I was going to shift from being in person where I like a certain amount of control. It's just the type of person that I am. I'm not a drill sergeant, but I like picture schedules. I like staying on task, that kind of thing. With Zoom, because I can't be there to, in person physically redirect, or just, it's a lot easier to ignore a face on a screen than it is a person who is getting down and holding your hand or making sure you have eye contact. Also in person, I can't be muted. And so one of the things I learned was being flexible, creating some just go-to tools, and also like the first session or two, really just kind of getting an idea of what the space was that the child had to work in, how much interaction parents and children were comfortable with themselves, directing the parents with, okay, can you help him put that aside, or can you manipulate that, or asking the parent if they understood the verbal direction that I have given and can they show the child, because that's the other really tough part. If you're trying to do a new skill or a craft, you can only explain it verbally and maybe show it a little bit on camera without quite seeing how they're processing, you learn to communicate multiple ways really fast. So other things I would say are important: have a couple like go-to fun videos that the kids can interact with. YouTube is your friend. Learn how to share your screen and annotate, because if nothing else, kids get a real big kick on drawing on your screen. And actually, they probably already know how to do that, so they can show you. And also get used to the fact that sometimes the device that they're working on isn't going to work for your usual things. So like a Chromebook that a child has for online schooling doesn't have a lot of the annotation stuff. If they're on a phone, they're not going to be able to follow along with a video because it's too small. So again, physical redirection. Sending parents a list of just basic materials to have, or asking if they have them. And again, be ready to be flexible. Pull stuff out of your brain, even if it seems like it's a little silly.
So you're making it fun. It's just sort of like, okay,
exactly,
flexible and have fun.
Once you're used to it, it's much easier to have just a routine, a schedule. You can make schedules on the computer, or you can just be flexible with, oh, hey, what have you got over there? Oh, you have a new stuffed animal that you want to play with? Well, let's do stuffed animal exercises. Can you throw and catch the stuffed animal with dad? Can you jump over the stuffed animal? The other thing too is kids are much more comfortable with demanding their preferred activities when they're at home, because it is a different setting. You're going to see at least a slightly different side to your child or your patient via Zoom versus in clinic, because they're home. There's a much different mindset to being at home than at school, at the clinic, at the playground.
Those are like some really practical tips. Thank you for sharing.
I think one of the biggest things that has helped me in telehealth is, I think that like families going into it have apprehension about is, OT is a medical model to some extent. And so I think people expect it to be like very structured, and to just sort of decrease their expectations of like how stressful the experience is. I think that they think it's going to be super involved. And so like helping them understand that it really is just like having a FaceTime conversation with obviously it's not as unstructured as that, but like there's no pressure surrounding it. I think that that's been really helpful to sort of have some sessions where you really can build rapport with people. I also think that knowing when and how to use therapeutic use of self has been really beneficial. Like I remember watching when I first started, I remember watching some things about telehealth, and it was like, have your area organized, like keep it like so that it's very like clean and clinical, and you're only doing what you need to do. Don't let your pets in the room. If I didn't have my cat in some of my sessions, they would not go well. I have had so much more buy-in because my cat walks by and people are like, oh my gosh, what's this? And then they get to learn, it feels a little bit more open. And obviously I'm not going to share my whole life with somebody, but like there are these little tidbits that when they see and learn, it helps them to open up and feel a little bit more calm and comfortable. So I think that has helped me a lot.
I think something to consider if you're having a session that starts out rocky, or if a kid's having a hard time connecting, is using what's intrinsically motivating to the kid and even that day. So for example, in the session I had before this meeting, the kiddo started out not wanting to transition away from what he was doing. And instead of fighting that, I asked, what have you been doing? Will you show me? And he had gone to the beach over the weekend and collected all of these seashells and sand dollars. And so he showed me his collection, and I, asked him questions. I had him kind of lead for a while. And then I brought out some sea themed activities. So from the boom cards that Jennifer shared, there was the kind of open-ended play, the visual motor exercise of different like seaweed and fish that you use your words to create the picture. And he has, one of his goals is, being able to self-advocate and being able to communicate what he needs verbally rather than using his body. So it was really good practice for us to say, I want the fish in front of the seaweed, using his words. And it went along with what he was already interested in. And then from there was an escape room that talked about size of the problem, another thing we're working on, but it was sea themed. So rather than going with my original plan for what I had for the day, I just kind of scrapped all of that and still kept within the parameters of what I wanted to work on, but kind of used his real life interest to formulate the session. And I think that's what we're really good at as OTs, is being creative and kind of thinking on our toes. So yeah, I think we're always talking to children about being flexible, about using, that skill, but, we can also remember to use that skill too, to structure our sessions. And I think that has been something that's been really helpful to practice.
So I think that's great advice, because you had a set plan, but you were able to completely pivot. And you also, though, I think have been so prepared that the resources. So you have the right resources like at your fingertips. So as soon as he had mentioned seashells, in your mind instantly you thought, oh gosh, I know of this resource that I can pull up. So you're prepared, sort of in a sense, that you can pivot quickly and just kind of go with child-led, which I think is huge, because just like in person, we're still building on the child's strengths and interests in being able to adapt. So yeah, that's a great example.
Kind of piggybacking off that, I think sometimes letting go of your own expectations of productivity, which is really hard for me. I have one kiddo who has that level of like metacognition that a lot of our kids have. And I found we were having a lot of meltdowns, and I kind of had to like let go of, I know he can do these things, but it just wasn't getting done. And I was every other session was fighting for him to turn the camera back on for like 10 minutes and like just this back and forth. And so now like I let him type before he writes, and he's so slow. And it's like excruciating, but every single session he's engaging in writing, and he has that level of autonomy, and like he types the schedule. And again, it's so slow. And it's really hard for me, and it's frustrating because he's in 3rd grade and he has the skill set, visual fine motor wise, but he doesn't have the emotional regulation skill set. And just kind of letting go, being like, it's a pandemic. This is where we are. I've never actually met him in person. But that's hard. I think we struggle with that, especially when we have those really good days. And then the next day, that kid is just not that kid we saw the week before. And you get excited and you push. And I'm definitely bad about that. I get excited, and then it was too much for the kiddo that day. And so I think kind of stepping back, and even if you only get 2 of the 4 things you have planned, like you got 2 things done. But that's been hard for me. But I don't know, it's working out.
Well, it sounds like though you already have your treatment plan in mind, and you know what you need to work on, but you're really meeting that child with where they're at. So you're not just looking at skills, but you're really using that sort of your emotional intelligence of sort of gauging where they are at emotionally, and knowing as you get to know them, like how much to push and when you need to kind of put your agenda aside. So he went from turning off the screen to actively engaging in it, even though it wasn't maybe initially how you would have wanted to engage, even though it was slow. But he is still working on the skills that you want him to work on, and he's not turning the camera off anymore, which is a huge, huge success. Especially you are able to develop rapport with this kiddo, and you've never met him in person, and to be able to turn that session around. And I think that's really good, like self-awareness on your part, because you know that this kid is like this. And so maybe he's not going to change, but I'm going to change as a therapist, and I'm going to change my approach. And I think it showed that it worked. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Kind of go in a similar but different direction, because I use the same strategies as well. in terms of like really focusing on therapeutic use of self and thinking about how can I adapt, or what backups do I have if this one isn't working. I don't need to, kind of force feed that idea if they're really struggling. Something that I've found is a way to help increase engagement and redirect when like they're having a really hard day and want the camera off, or are finding it really, really visually intimidating. I normally, like, my picture that I have when I turn it off isn't me. It's a picture of a frog in the layer swing. And so for one kid, like, he named it. And it's kind of a strategy for us if he's having a day where he doesn't want to see himself on the screen, or he's feeling stressed by seeing eye contact with me on the screen, he'll ask for hops, and I'll put that up so that it just kind of decreases the demand visually of what's going on. And then most of the time he'll turn his screen back on. If so, it's just him and hops. And then he'll tell me when he's ready and I'll put the camera back on. But I've also had times with him where I'll ask him, like, do you feel like you need a break? Or are you feeling like you want to do something silly? And when he says he wants to do something silly, we'll play like a make me laugh game where my screen is on, but my facial expression is really, like, really blank, really stern. And he'll have to try to make me laugh, which means he has to turn on his screen because I can't see him. And then I'll do the same for him, where I will try to make him laugh as a way, and it'll just be like making silly faces, making silly voices. But it's not something that's like a structured set activity, but it's a natural way of using engagement and looking at facial expressions, looking at, kind of changing your arousal level by using humor as a way to get yourself out of feeling really down and sad and tired. And it's worked really, really well for him. He finds it something that's like really motivating, and will naturally just turn on the screen because he wants to play. He wants to try to make me laugh and see if he can. So that's one that I've used. And then for my kiddos that are like racing around the screen or are really energetic and they're excited to play, they want to engage, but they want to do their thing. And it's in the teletherapy realm, it gets really hard to try to get them back without escalating a little further, because they're hamming it up sometimes, like, for you. They're having a great time showing you that they're running around. So you saying, okay, let's calm our body. It might just not work the best for that kid. And most of the time I find that it doesn't. So I'll kind of flip the script, and depending on what we're working on. I had a kid who was doing, we were doing kind of like an obstacle course exercise-based activity. And there was a station that was copying different body moves. That's where, he was having fun with it, but got so excited that he was just zooming around and finding it funny that his mom was saying, no, come on, let's do this. And so instead of modeling that as well, I started demonstrating like I was frustrated or really sad of, I can't do it. I don't know how to do this pose. What do I do? Where do I put my arm? Where do I put my leg? And was kind of hamming it up to an extent. And he came over and was, no, you do this, Sarah, you put your arm up, and was trying to teach me as a way to foster that empathy and engagement of, instead of kind of going in the vein where I think kids get very used to being told what to do or this is what's expected or unexpected. But most of the time they can show it if you just flip the lens and not have it focus on what they're doing wrong, but what they're doing right. And showing them of like, I'm struggling, I'm having a really hard time. Can you help me? And I found that to be really successful as an engagement strategy.
I think the strategy that you used of having him show you where he's the teacher is very empowering, because there is very much a sense of, I don't have control of the situation. And I think a lot of the kids that we do work with, they're constantly being told how to do stuff, but you giving him that little moment of, being the teacher is really empowering. And then I think you mentioned like the controlled choices. Do you want A or do you want B? And just focusing on like the positive reinforcement is a great strategy. And that's the behavior management is definitely a challenge, like with our kids, not only in person, but then how do you handle it online? So, and I like that it's like not just the kids are turning off the screen, but it's literally running away from the screen. and how do you get them back in front? So it's good. I know for me, I will use like the technology to sort of help with with that aspect. So I will change up my screen, or I'll change the background, or again, just being silly and just bringing that joy, I think, back into the session is great. I mean, it's sort of like when we're on the phone ourselves with somebody or watching, having a little bit of entertainment goes a long way. I mean, you're really wanting to like entertain and to educate and just to go back to the roots of play, which I think so often therapists, they get so caught up in the goals of, yes, I need to get this done, they forget, well, we're pediatric therapists, we're play based. And if you're having fun, then that means the kid is having fun. And if you're not having fun, they very likely are not having fun either. So I think that's really cool that, that we're able to do that. And we have a great opportunity to be able to play with kids and relate to kids. So does anybody else want to add any tips or strategies of how you've turned that frown upside down with your telehealth sessions?
I wanted to mention, kind of like some of the other girls have already, but when I start my sessions, a lot of times I'll have the kids start with, how was your week? What did you do that was fun or different? Or what adventure did you have this week? But a lot of times I'll add show and tell or show and share in, where they'll show up with their favorite stuffy, a new toy, a Lego creation they built. And so they get to share something really cool that they accomplished or did this week and that they really enjoy. And sometimes I have to set a time limit because they get very into it and really want to keep going. But that helps a lot with getting them engaged, especially when they didn't want to transition into our session. They were having a hard time putting that down. So I let them bring that with them and tell me about it, or who helped you with it, or if you did it by yourself, or is this an ongoing project, or all kinds of different things like that. So that's really helped turn those frowns upside down. And then I do a lot of, like the other girls do too, but a lot of the extra parent coaching I'm able to do through virtual visits, because we're in the home and working on those things as they come up naturally. We work on them, but a lot of times the parents are there, they can come in and work through those moments and use all those tools that we've been practicing in the clinic. We use them at home in the moment. And so that's really strengthened a lot of parents in their skills that they have with their child at home. When those things come up, they're actually using those tools. We're working on it together. And then the child's able to engage with the parent more. And they're using that language, what's expected right now or unexpected, and group plan or my own plan. And a lot of my parents have that blended into their language at home now. And I'm seeing it really stick. So that's really been helping a lot of them and working through the self-regulation pieces and doing what they need to do during the week. But like the other girls do, I use a lot of humor and laughing. I always let the parent know, I have a plan for today, but we're going to make a plan together and we're going to go with the flow. And if this doesn't work, we're going to switch gears. And that's okay. But as they've seen that, they realize that does work. It doesn't have to be Miss Jessica's plan or Miss Sarah's plan to make it work. It's, where's your kiddo today? This is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to go about doing it. And it's different every single week. And they've seen that work. And so they're feeling more comfortable with that. And I think that's a big part of why virtual therapy works, is parent engagement, coaching, and working with the kid in the moment at home is different than the clinic or at school because it's their comfort zone. But we use a lot of humor and laughing and silly animal walks and all kinds of fun things. And they just have a ball with it. I just try to focus on fun. As long as it feels fun to them, they want to be there. It's hard work. We're working hard, but we tell a silly joke out of nowhere, or do a silly face, or, just blend it in and make it fun and help them want to be there. And I've had a lot of parents say thank you, because sometimes virtual school is hard, but on the screen, OT is, the parents notice too that it's very different. OT on a virtual call is different than school, because they get to have the one-on-one and really engage and be themselves and share about themselves. And I share a little bit too, but that really pulls them in. And the parent goes, wow, this is really helping with their school too, because they engage with you during therapy. Now, when they go to school, they can engage with teacher and friends on the computer screen a lot easier. So it's transitioning into other areas of their life. So those are some of the things that I do that in my sessions.
I think that's a really good observation, just in terms of the parent aspect of things in terms of what you can do during telehealth that you can't necessarily always do in the clinic, because like you said, they're in their comfort zone, they're in their home environment, and so you have that window into really what's happening and being able to coach the parents and help them with that carryover piece. And plus, I like the fact that you also are differentiating that this is not online school. Like, this is OT. And as a motor therapist, you're not just sitting in front of the screen. And I think there are some misconceptions that we do have to break, because oftentimes parents and caregivers, that's all that they can think about is like, well, how could this work? And so one way around it, I know with a lot of our families, is like, let's just try it once. Let's just try it once, or let's try it a couple times. And then they see it really is different than just sitting in front of a screen. Like, it's fun, it's engaging, and that you're working with the whole group. There's that whole dynamic. You're not just working with the child, because it's the whole system we're working with the parents and with the kids. And have you found that your carryover for home programs is better? So I guess my next question to you guys, unless you have anything else to talk about it, is what are the benefits that your parents have appreciated? Like, what are some things that you've noticed that your parents have really appreciated about telehealth, or even things that they've said to you? And how would it benefit parents to have telehealth sessions? Like, what's in it for them?
Two answers, and they're on opposite sides of the spectrum. One is that I have some parents that are extremely involved in sessions, that definitely learn a lot of the language we use and carry it over at home, from, zones of regulation, size of the problem, expected versus unexpected behavior, learning some of the sensory-based calm down strategy. So I found that it really amplifies buy-in and carryover for home programming, as well as it just being in place, like in the natural environment of the child. So you can use a lot of the equipment that would naturally be in the home. So for one of my children, when she's frustrated, she does a really good job with having a special pillow that's her squeezy pillow. And I know that it looks like a unicorn because I'm seeing it on screen. And so we say, like, let's go get your unicorn. And mom now knows, like, we need our unicorn. So it's just very much like using the environment as a tool. So that answer is, just the increased buy-in because the parents are directly involved in their home. The opposite side of that is that I have some parents that are extremely busy, that are working full-time from home virtually, that have multiple children that are doing school virtually, and they're very taxed and kind of at their wits' end. And so if they have the kind of child that they can leave the room and have an hour to kind of do what they need to do, that is also really positive. So I have another child that, like, he doesn't really leave his house. They're being extremely cautious with COVID precautions. So, he doesn't go to the grocery store with his mother. He doesn't go have play dates. He is very much in his home. Luckily, he's not an only child, so he has some socialization, but he really looks forward to just seeing me every week as a new face, and will like count down the days. And the mom also really appreciates it because for that hour, she knows that he's engaged and she can go do some laundry or make a phone call or something. So I would say, based on the family's needs, I'm seeing kind of like two benefits of either like increased participation or having some hands-off time. And then of course we tie in at the end in the last 5 minutes. I kind of tell if the parent is one that's more absent during the session, then I can say what we did and why. But I would say those are the two patterns I'm seeing with my caseload.
I think that's really good that you're taking those personal factors, that it's more of a win, like that parents can still connect with you, but it's not necessarily something that is going to be another stressful thing added to their day. And that you can still work with them and you can convey that, and they don't necessarily have to be there the whole time, and they're still going to get the benefit. So it really is like a a win-win, because you're also not coming in and imposing your schedule and your agenda on a parent that's already stressed. Like, it's not one more thing that they have to add. It's actually like a positive thing where the child really looks forward to your session, and then the parent does as well. So definitely not like electronic babysitting, for sure, because you've already set that expectation of, this is how it's going to work. And I do need to talk with you towards the end. And that model really works for where they're at. So I think that is a really good example of being sensitive to the whole family system and kind of meeting them with where they're at. Yeah. What other benefits do you guys see for parents, and how parents have benefited from telehealth this past year?
I think one thing, I mean, this kind of is in line with that, but I think you can, if you have kind of a rough day and the session kind of has a couple blocks and just areas that are tricky, it's easier to like take that time to like check in with the parent, see like, what can we do different next time? I'm thinking about doing this. And if I do this, like, can you have these things ready next week? Because I definitely have a kid who, it's inconsistent. Sometimes we have really great sessions, and then every now and then there's just, everyone has rough days. And so we sort of have to problem solve. And I feel like with telehealth, there is more potential and ability to do that, because for in-person sessions, usually when I check in with parents, it's really just like 2 or 3 minutes, sort of giving them an overview of what we did, what they can do at home. Whereas if like something big is going on, we can stop the session a little earlier. I can talk to the parent a little bit longer. We can make a plan for the next time. So yeah, just more communication overall. I think it certainly helps a lot. And then also they get to see and hear things the way I do things. So like they hear how I talk about using things like the zones of regulation, and using that therapeutic use of self, and saying, I'm in the blue zone today. I'm feeling tired today. And then they realize that they can do that too. Sometimes just being able to see that like just gives them another resource to pull from and another way to interact with their kids.
So just being relatable as a person, I think, you're not the expert coming in, but just being relatable and really collaborating with the parent, I think is huge. So, and then I think there's definitely more buy-in when you're working with that parent and figuring out, well, what is a priority for you? Like, yes, I'm acknowledging that this is really hard, and then this was easy. Like, how can I help you? And coming up with a plan together. I think another strategy that you use that's really helpful too is involving them in the planning process. For those parents that are, open to that, is you're talking about, well, what's the plan for the next session? And kind of, well, this is how they can help, and this is what we can do to get ready. I think that's really courteous actually as well, because I know for myself as a parent, if someone just said, do you have this? And I just get on a phone call, that can be kind of stressful, because then the pressure's on, you're not really ready for it. But the fact that you're giving them advance notice a week before for your treatment plan, it's beneficial for the parent, because they know kind of what they need to have ready, what the expectation is. You're not just suddenly putting it on them. And then for you as a provider, it actually helps with your treatment planning, and it helps with the child, because then they know what to expect. So some of the anxiety is preparing and knowing what to expect, which I think a little bit, like you said, just some conversations around that, a little bit goes a long way. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a good tip. Does anybody else have anything they want to share before we close, as far as what works for their parents and what's been good?
I think just that reminder that our job isn't to have good OT sessions. And if we have a really bad one, that we're maybe helping the kid more that day. And I think that can be hard. I've had parents email me and apologize when their kid was being who they were that day. And, that's fine. Like, it's not helping our kids if they're really successful in all of our sessions. And if we don't see that. And I think sometimes with parents, they're like, at home is just so hard and like they're overwhelmed and they have all this. And it's like, well, maybe that's more helpful for us to see that, because they're not going to be adults coming to the therapy gym, or older kids come, hopefully. Or, I mean, you know, a lot of our kids will graduate, and like, we don't need them to be successful here. We need them to be successful where they need to be successful, and that's school or home, which is the same thing for a lot of them right now.
So giving them permission to just see what real life is like. Like, you know, it's okay if I see a meltdown. And I think for, you know, you as a therapist, you've sort of set your agenda aside and you're like, yeah, it's okay if we don't have a good session, because then I kind of know what you need to deal with every single day, right? We often get that, well, they don't do that at the clinic, they're fine. And then you get to see them really what they're like, because you have a little glimpse into their home, and to not be embarrassed about it. Like if they're having a tantrum and a full-on meltdown, then that gives you an idea of, oh, what is it that we really need to work on, and how can I help you as a parent? How can we work through that together? So I think that's really good to acknowledge that we've pretty much seen everything and nothing can really surprise us. And we don't need to have perfect behavior for an OT session, because that's what we're here for. And also, we don't have to have a solution right away. You know, sometimes I'll just have to say, you know, I'm really glad I got to see that. I know it's really hard, but let me think about that for a little bit. I really want to help you. But let me think about that for a little bit and let's talk more about it. And so you don't have to put that extra pressure on yourself that you have to solve the solution right away. And I think parents, caregivers appreciate that, yeah, I'm going to think about it and let's work on it. And you're acknowledging it and keeping the door open for solutions. So thank you so much for sharing just this spontaneous conversation of what has really worked well. Really, you guys are all rock stars. And I think coming on a year of doing telehealth where we suddenly had to pivot, I just love all that you bring to the screen. You know, I know that you bring it in clinic when we're doing in-person sessions, but the fact that you've been even able to go like above and beyond with your telehealth sessions is really awesome. And I think it's also especially special because this is the time when our parents and families and kids need it the most. This has been hard, you know, it's been hard for therapists, it's been hard for kids, but the fact that we can still provide that support during this time of transition is really incredible. And you're not only helping them for these individual sessions, you are giving them life skills.
Well, I hope that you learned some new strategies from my team. And again, I want to thank you, Jennifer, Shannon, Sarah, Jessica, and Julia, for sharing your expertise and your experience. We wish you the best of luck for all your therapy sessions, whether they're in person or online.